The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. It's just about straight up noon, and this is Nancy Pinkerton. I'm one of the account managers with Socius. Today's webinar is presented by Dan Doolin and Integrity Data. Dan and Integrity Data have had a long relationship as a certified Microsoft vendor, as well as developing many of the current HR and payroll enhancements for Dynamics GP. Today, Dan will be presenting LINC, which offers comprehensive workflow and notifications capabilities to Microsoft Dynamics, automating business processes and creating real-time notifications. We will be recording the sessions today and should have it up on our website by tomorrow. And I will be monitoring all the questions in the question box as they come in. Everyone is in listen only. Hopefully at the end, when we do have some time for questions, I can unmute. Sometimes we've had a bit of a bump there, but we'll give it a shot. But please feel free to ask the questions as you think about them. And as we go through the demo and webinar, then maybe we can address those. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and let Dan Doolin take over with Integrity Data. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, everyone, for joining our webinar today. And as Nancy mentioned, we're going to talk about, and as you saw in your invitation, we're going to talk about LINC for Microsoft Dynamics GP. And what LINC is a workflow and notification tool. So we're going to go through some PowerPoint slides. We're going to go through some examples. And we're going to use Dynamics GP as a platform today. If there's any of you that are on the call today that use Dynamics SL or Dynamics Nav or AX, we have built workflows on some of those platforms. We've probably built the most on SL. So LINC is workable with those applications, but we primarily are focusing on Dynamics GP today. As Nancy mentioned, if you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the question box. We'll try to get to those at the end and make sure we get all of those answered for you. On the first slide here, you have my contact information, Dan Doolin, DW at integrity-data.com, as well as a somewhat recent photo, so you can put a face to the name and to the voice, I guess, today. All right, what we want to do today is talk about things that kind of make us go crazy. And so we use this picture of this guy that we call Joe, and Joe's obviously not having a great day. And we've all been in these situations before, and unfortunately we won't be able to completely alleviate those, but hopefully what we're going to do is provide and show you some ways that you can alleviate some of these feelings of being overwhelmed, being surprised, you got bad news. Joe here is doing sort of the double-hander on the forehead where something has obviously gone wrong within the organization. Or sometimes, as I like to say, it's personal experience, Joe's spouse called and reminded him of everything that he forgot to do before he left the house this morning. Can't do anything about those. But in those work environment situations of being surprised because somebody didn't follow a business process, there was a mistake made that wasn't found until too late, or at least later in the game when it became a bigger problem to fix. So think about situations in your own work environment where that mistake was made. Somebody set up something incorrectly. Somebody didn't get approval for something that they should have gotten approval for. Anything like that where the business process wasn't followed. That business process exists for a reason. If it's not followed, that opens you up for additional risk and things to go wrong. Creating these situations that we see Joe in here. And if you're feeling like that, or if you do get that feeling more than you think is acceptable, then stay tuned, because we're going to talk about some concepts and show you some examples of ways that we can alleviate that for ourselves within our own organizations, as well as our teammates throughout the rest of our organization as well. Oops. Okay, so Joe's obviously having a rough day there, but what's he missing? And we put this slide in here just to kind of help get everybody on the same page as far as what we mean by workflow, because workflow is a pretty general term. When I think of workflow and how I define workflow is really a way to manage and oversee the execution of the business process. So you all have business processes in place within your own organization, and those are important, and you came up with those business processes or somebody else came up with those business processes and documented them, because at least at the moment, those are truly the best ways to do things within your own organization. That's the way that it's supposed to be done. And it's supposed to be done that way because doing it that way will reduce cost, manage risk, and improve the accuracy and efficiency of the things that are done and how they're done within your organization. If the business process isn't followed, then obviously we're talking about higher cost of operations, higher risk, and being less accurate and less efficient. And all those three components are really mixed together. When you're not efficient, when you're not accurate, cost goes up, risk goes up, and things like that. And when you can manage all of those things, then it streamlines the operation, improves profitability, and all those things we're after in all of the organizations that we work for. So with a workflow management tool like LINC, you can help make sure that that business process is being followed. And I should make a slide for this, but what I always say is that what LINC is going to do is help you integrate and link together your business process, the people that are supposed to be following that business process, and the system in which those actions are being taken. So we get into examples in Dynamics GP, such as creating a new vendor. The business process should be that that new vendor needs to be approved before it's utilized and used in an accounts payable transaction. Well, if you don't have LINC in place, then somebody can just go in and create a vendor. The system isn't enforcing the business process. Nobody else knows that that vendor's created unless a report is generated or unless somebody's just paying attention. So certain things can happen there that may not benefit the organization. And yes, I'm referring to things like fraud and some of those kinds of things. Versus having a system like LINC in place where all those things are tied together. So if somebody creates a new vendor, somebody else gets automatically notified. The LINC is managing the business process and holding up that vendor from being utilized within a transaction until they're approved. And I'll show you an example of that. That's sort of the mindset that we want to have as we start talking about workflow. Is think about those things in your own organization where, ooh, somebody did something that they weren't supposed to, and not that maybe it could be as simple as they didn't know, or the system lets them do it that way. Anything like that. And so what we're going to do is bring all those pieces together under one umbrella, and then really see how everything functions smoothly together. All right, now when we start talking about business processes and workflow and approving things, I put this slide in here because I want you to start to think a little bit outside the box, outside the Dynamics GP box, for example, because some of these things are going to be new concepts that you thought, wow, maybe you never really thought about doing that in relation to Dynamics GP, or maybe you have and never thought it was possible, or it was going to be excruciatingly expensive to build or to do. But think about the system notifying whoever within your organization or even outside the organization if there's an accounting issue or a compliance risk. And think about making sure the business practices and business processes are followed correctly every time. Is there a way to require approvals for data that's changed in the system? Newly created records such as a vendor, changing credit limits, changing employee pay rates, changing payment terms, anything like that. Think about all those things that need to be changed that really should go through an approval process. Next one, do I really have to go through so many reports to find that one important piece of information? Typically when we're looking at reports, we're looking for exceptions. And when we're doing that, that works well, but think about the ability for the system to automatically notify you when that condition is met. So the cash balance has gone below a certain amount, instantly notifying the CFO or the accounting manager, whoever, that balance has gone below that certain level. Anything like that that you need to know about, any type of alerting capabilities, keep those in mind. And then how can I approve transactions fast, even from a mobile device? I'm going to even show you an example of that, to where you can approve certain requests wherever you can get email. So whether that's on your laptop at work, that's on your laptop at home, that's on your phone at a work conference, on your phone at a golf course, or something more fun like that now that it's finally spring. Just think about those environments and how those would add value to your existing business structure. Okay, getting more specific. Think about Dynamics GP and all the areas of Dynamics GP, and what this is about 1/3 of the workflows that we have available with LINC. Okay, so there's workflows available in all areas of the system. So accounts payable, receivables, payroll, human resources, financials, compliance. We've built some for inventory that aren't even on here. And then there's a box at the lower right-hand corner called Build Your Own. And what that does is, of course, gives you the ability to build your own workflows wherever you need them in the system. So long as you can identify where that data is stored in the database and use some of the workflow tools, you can build your own workflow for whatever you need. A lot of times a common question is, what's the difference between the workflow that comes with Dynamics GP and LINC? Well, the key difference is, there's two key differences. One is that there are only 10 workflows that come with Dynamics GP, and nothing against those. If that's what you need, if you need, one or more of those 10, those will work fine. But what we typically find is that customers need more than that. And with LINC, as of right now, and we're always adding to the list, there are 100 workflows that you can download into Dynamics GP that are ready to go. You simply download them and make a few changes to it to make sure it's going to the right person if it's an alert, and you're ready to go. And those are included with the license. We'll talk more about that later. The second primary difference is that you have the ability to build your own workflow. So if you said, well, I have this weird field that is very important to us because we're a unique organization, and every organization is unique, and you need a notification or an approval process around anything that happens with that field, you can build that, and you can build that pretty quickly. Okay, so those are the two distinct differences, and also two of the primary advantages and value indicators of LINC. All right, so let's get to some fun stuff here. How might Joe's life be different with LINC? And what I'm going to do here is switch over to Dynamics GP 2013, and we're going to show some examples of utilizing LINC within Dynamics GP. Okay, so here we have Dynamics GP, and as I mentioned, it's GP 2013. LINC is compatible back to, I think, version 10.0, and of course GP 2010 and GP 2013. Now let's go ahead and take a look at a very simple example. In this example, what's going to happen is that I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a general ledger account. And all we're demonstrating here is the ability for LINC to send a notification to somebody when something happens in the system. So some data element has changed, somebody's getting notified. I'm going to go to Cards, Financial, Account. Okay, and I'm just going to make up a quick account number here. Okay. Dan's cash account, make it a little bit suspicious. Dan's cash. Okay, and then it's going to be obviously a cash account. Okay, so as a user, nothing really to see here. You're not missing anything. All I'm doing is, I'm going into the system, doing my thing, creating this account. And when I save this, what's going to happen is that LINC is going to recognize, because it's configured to watch for this, that there's a new general ledger account, and somebody's going to get notified that that account's been created. So I'll switch over to Outlook here, okay, and I'm just going to hit Send and Receive. And as you can see, the controller has gotten an email already that says a new general ledger account notification. So a new GL account was added by the user, SA, so it knows who did it. Here's the account number, the alias, the description, and everything about that account. And so that quickly somebody else was notified. So go back to what we talked about at the beginning with keeping the business process, the system, and the people all in check with each other. That quickly, somebody did something in the system, somebody else that needs to know about that was notified immediately that something had happened. So maybe the general ledger account notification isn't something that strikes you as, ooh, that's something I need, but there's probably something within your environment that somebody else needs to know about as soon as it happens. I mentioned the cash balance thing. It could be a new inventory item. It could be a shortage on the inventory item, or the quantity has gone below a certain amount. It could be something on the financial account, invoicing. Somebody posted an invoice that's greater than $100,000. I would like to know about that if that happened internally. Anything like that. And again, if it's not downloadable, you can build it, and we can certainly assist you with that if you need us to, but a lot of times you may not need us to do that. Okay, so that's a quick example of a notification. You also notice here that if it's a GP user, this person can drill down directly into the account maintenance window. I'm going to show you an example of that on the next one, next example. All right, let's go back to Dynamics GP. Let's close our account maintenance window. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a vendor. And I talked about this a little bit at the beginning. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a new vendor. And then we're going to see that vendor go through the approval process and what happens to that vendor. So we're going to see some new things here as we go through this. Cards purchasing vendor. Okay, brand new vendor maintenance window. So I'm going to enter a new vendor here, and I'm going to pick on Nancy a little bit. Okay, I'm going to assign a class just so we get some more data. Okay, watch me type here for a couple minutes. So I'm going in, and I'm just entering the vendor. Get really creative with my address here. I'm located in Lincoln, Illinois. Probably just a couple hundred miles west of most of you. Oops. Let's leave that blank for now. All right, so I've entered the vendor information, so I'm going in probably as a AP clerk, entering this new vendor. The business process is that the vendor needs to be approved before it can be used within the transaction, within a payables transaction. The way that Dynamics GP does that is it has a hold checkbox, so the vendor can be put on hold. I'm not putting the vendor on hold. The automated workflow process is going to do that for me. We'll see that here in just a minute. So I've created this new vendor. You'll notice at the top of the screen there's an additional bar. It's called the LINC workflow ribbon that's telling us right now that there's no workflow information available. And that's fine. We'll see that change here in just a minute. So I'm going to save this new vendor that I've created. Okay. So what we expect to happen next is that obviously somebody's going to get notified that a new vendor has been created, and somebody's going to have to approve that new vendor. And in this situation, it's going to be the purchasing manager. Close the vendor maintenance window. Go back over to Outlook. Okay. And our send and receive here. And you can see that the purchasing manager has already gotten an email that says there's a new vendor approval. Okay, I'm going to expand this. Actually, just go for it all here. There we go. So the following vendor was created. Click here to approve or reject. I'll come back to that. Here's all the information about this vendor. So all the information at least that I entered. So in this situation, that purchasing manager can see the information about the vendor, and they can click to approve or reject. If they want to see some more information about that vendor, they can click here, and that's what it's going to do is take them back into Dynamics GP to the vendor maintenance window. Okay, so that person does need to be a Dynamics GP user, and I'm already logged in, so it's taking me directly to the window. So here's the vendor that we just created. You'll notice the ribbon has changed. It says there's a workflow in process that's assigned to another user. That's the new vendor approval. But you'll also notice that this the vendor has been put on hold, so they cannot be used in a transaction. Okay, so you might think, well, if I'm up to no good, I can bypass this and just uncheck the checkbox and start using the vendor. Or if I'm in a hurry, I don't want to wait for approval, whatever the situation might be. But if I uncheck that, or try to uncheck that, LINC is smart enough to know that that shouldn't be checked, or shouldn't be edited when the workflow is in process. So the hold status cannot be changed while the vendor is being approved, and it goes back to being checked. Now, what's fantastic about LINC is that you can tailor each of these however you see fit. So for example, the messaging that appears on the hold checkbox, the fact that the hold checkbox is the one that gets marked and is locked during the workflow, you can change all of that if you need to. The design and the thought process around LINC is such that your business processes are unique to you, and we're not going to tell you how you should and shouldn't do things. We're going to give you some great suggestions and even some good starting points with the workflow that you can download, but it's fully intended that you're going to take that and mold it to match your business process. So if you don't want it to be put on hold, you don't have to. So those tools are all built in to where you can tailor and modify the workflow management tool. Remember, that's at the top of that diagram to manage your business process. I don't want to change your business process because you're the one that knows the most about your business process and knows the most about why it is the way that it is. LINC is there to help you manage that, not change it or not require you to change the business process. Okay, so all that said, to just reaffirm that all of these things are definable and tailorable by you as you implement the product. It doesn't have to be changed by me at Integrity Data. It doesn't have to even need to be changed by associates. It all can be changed there within your own organization very easily. Okay, so here's the vendor. We know that they're on hold. There's a workflow in process. If I go back to the email request, I can click here to approve or reject. What it's going to do is take me out to the approval. So two things. One is I don't have to be a Dynamics GP user to approve, and I don't have to be a Dynamics, what was the other thing? I don't have to log into Dynamics GP to approve. So it's all outside of Dynamics GP, so you're not using up Dynamics GP users. Okay, so I'm going to choose to approve. This is a pretty simple approval form. We can ask for comments or anything else. We'll see that in a form later on. But this is just gathering the approver information. Do I approve or reject this new vendor? And I'm going to complete the task. Okay, so now what happens when we complete the task is that the person that initiated that request or entered that new vendor, they're going to get a notification. And of course, that vendor is going to be taken off hold and be ready to use in a transaction. Okay, so if I go back into, let's go to email first. Okay, just hit send and receive again. Coming back to the user, your new vendor, Nancy Pinkerton, was approved. And again, you can click here to go into Dynamics GP. If I go into Dynamics GP, look at the vendor. Here's Nancy Pinkerton. No running workflows, not on hold anymore, and we can do whatever we want with that. And if somebody comes in and says, well, golly, where did this vendor come from and were they approved? Even though it says no running workflows, they can click on the ribbon at the top of the screen and see that that new vendor was approved and see all the workflow history for that vendor is approved by the purchasing manager. Okay, so that's a pretty classic example, pretty straightforward. And remember, a couple things. One is, again, you can have an approval on any change. So if it was an address change for a vendor or just approving the change to the check name field, anything like that, you can perform those workflow functions using LINC. Just another note on that also is that the workflow ribbon, you also decide where that's placed. So if you build a new workflow, obviously you can assign that workflow ribbon to whatever screens apply to that workflow. Okay, up next is a popular request, and that's AP transaction approval. I'm not going to go through the whole process of keying in the transaction. I just want to show you some of the key features here. So let's go into transactions, purchasing, transaction entry. Okay, let's pull up a transaction here. So this is a transaction that was entered and is waiting for approval. So there's a couple things going on here. One is that the transaction was entered, and when it was entered, it got sent out for approval. And we're going to look at the emails associated with this that have already been sent. Something else has happened here. In the process of entering the transaction, we also uploaded the vendor invoice that we received from the vendor. We scanned it and uploaded it so that we can see it all through the process. Okay, so let's start right here. One is that we've got our workflow ribbon for the transaction showing that it's in process. The second thing is we have the more information icon on the right side of the ribbon. Okay, and what that is a link to the original invoice from the vendor. So many times customers are saying, well, we're passing this paper around, we don't know whether it's approved or not, we lose track of it, we're writing on it, that kind of thing. Well, that can all go away. Simply get the invoice from the vendor, scan it, enter the transaction, upload it, everything goes out for approval. Everybody can see the document electronically. It's tied to the transaction in GP, and I'll show you in just a minute how the approver can also see the document as well. So just for clarification, what we're not doing here is getting the invoice from the vendor, scanning it, and then automatically peeling the data off of it to create the transaction. If you have a high volume of those that you want to automatically peel the data off the invoice and to create the AP transaction, LINC will not do that for you, but what it will do is give you the ability for the approval as well as tying the document to the approval process and to the transaction in Dynamics GP. Okay, let's go look at the email associated with this. If I go back to the purchasing manager. Okay, here's the email that the purchasing manager received. AP invoice ACE 010 requires your approval. It is this invoice number, the vendor, the description, the amount, the due date, and then also, and you can add additional information here. If you wanted additional information in the email, that's very easy to do. Now, a couple things can happen here. One is that if the approver is on the network, and again, they don't have to be a Dynamics GP user or even logged in, they can view the invoice directly from the email. Okay, same thing, linking back to the original document that's stored in a document library. Okay, let's go back to the email. Oops. Okay. Now the approver can approve or reject if they're logged onto the network, which is going to be similar to the vendor approval that we did, or they can approve or reject remotely. Okay, so they wouldn't be able to see the invoice remotely in this case, and another option is to also attach the invoice to the email. So for remote approval is something you would need for an AP transaction. We would use it, we'd set it up a little bit differently and pull in the attachment capability versus the link. But regardless of where this person is, as long as they can get email, they can approve this workflow via email from their smartphone, regardless of platform, iPad, laptop, home computer, or whatever the situation might be. And what it's doing here is, if you look at the link, it's just emailing back to the system that I'm approving this task. It knows which transaction it is, which workflow task it is, and so it would approve that remotely. Okay. If there's questions about that, make sure you put those in the question queue. We'll make sure we get those answered at the end of the presentation. Okay, so far we've done a simple notification with the the GL account, new GL account notification. We've done an approval with the new vendor, and then we've done an AP transaction approval, Also pulling in the document that needs to be circulated. That's where I'd pull in that fourth entity. Remember I talked about linking up and integrating the business process, the system, the people, and then the fourth thing would be the associated documentation that needs to go with that. Just making sure those are all staying on the same page. The next example that I want to show is going to be on the payroll and human resources side. And it's just an example of the process starting outside of Dynamics GP. Okay, so I'm going to go over to Business Portal, to the Employee Center page. It's going to take just a second here. And what I've got, even though I'm sitting inside of Business Portal, we're not really using Business Portal functionality. And what we're doing is just using a SharePoint functionality, and this just seemed like a good place to put the form. So got a PTO request form here. So what I'm going to do is open it up, and I'm going to put in a PTO request, and we'll see that get routed as well. So it knows who I am based on my login credentials and who I'm logged in as. In this case, it's Adam Barr. For demonstration purposes, we did put the capability in here. Actually, it's a different Adam. For demonstration purposes, we did open this up for ourselves so we can pick any employee and pick on anybody that we want. I want to choose Adam Barr. Thought I chose Adam Barr. Just simply because I know what kind of balances he has. He has several different leave codes. This is integrating with our Comprehensive Leave Manager tool on the payroll and human resources side. Just a capability to have a lot of different balances there stored there. So I want to choose PTO. Based on that, it knows what his current balance is. He only has 12 hours. So we can put in a request here for the reason. Tomorrow's 4/25. We're going to do catch up on yard work since it's winter. It's been, seems like 8 months long. Okay, and then got Adam Barr. You notice at the bottom it knows who his manager is, Kathy Flood, her email address. LINC is picking up all this data and creating the relationships or understanding, deciphering the relationship to know that here's the employee, here's the supervisor to notify, and so on. So Adam can go ahead and submit this request. Okay, and there's a bunch of stuff there that isn't very interesting. What we're going to do is go over to Outlook, as you might have guessed, and hit our send and receive. Okay. And what we'll get is an email first going to Human Resources, assuming I did everything correctly. And if not, we'll speed up the process and go look at a previous example. There we go. It's going to Human Resources first in this example. And this is just the way we built the flow. In a lot of cases, it goes to the manager first for approval, and then to Human Resources for them to log that transaction, make sure it gets updated and everything. This is the way we do it internally, and maybe we just do it backwards. It kind of seems like that sometimes, but anyway, this is the way that it's done, and you can obviously jockey this around as you see fit. So Adam Barr has requested the PTO leave for 4/25, the reason, catch up on yard work, PTO balance, and to view the PTO calendar, click here, and to approve or reject, they can click here. So there's also this ability, and this is integrated with SharePoint, which SharePoint is doing the work on the workflow side. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later as we get into sort of how you do this kind of thing. It gives us a lot of capabilities for workflows and calendars and all the different capabilities that we need around workflow processing. So you can see Adam Barr's got PTO. If we look over at the color code, it's green. I mean, it's just standard a leave request. Nothing's happened with it yet. But we can see all of the other leave requests out there within the organization. Okay, so Adam, or the HR manager is going to go ahead and approve this request. Okay, it's approved. It's not FMLA. Put in the comments. Please come do my yard work as well, and then complete the task. So you'll see this is an example of where you can add some additional information, continue that communication thread. So in the vendor approval, we just had approve, reject. This is showing you some other capabilities. Okay, complete that task. Now what it's doing is it's also going to the supervisor for approval as well. So let's go back to Outlook for a minute. Okay, in the inbox for the supervisor. Oops, I'm sorry, made a mistake there. This is going back to the employee saying the request has been submitted. Let's hit send and receive. Okay. In this case, we're using the same email address over. So as the supervisor, I am now getting an email saying, hey, Adam's requested this time off. Go ahead and catch up. He wants to catch up on the yard work. Here's the balance. We know that HR has approved it, so we're taking those comments from Human Resources or from any previous approver and incorporating them. So think about this, if it's not a PTO request, maybe it's a purchase order request or an AP transaction request that requires multiple levels of approval. And so what we're demonstrating here is a capability for you to see as a secondary approver the comments from the previous approver, or maybe they rejected it. Whatever that situation is, again, that communication tool, keeping everybody on the same page electronically, is in play here through the comments and through the email and data capture that's going on in the workflow process. Okay, so again, can look at the PTO calendar also and click here to approve or reject. Okay, so I'm going to approve this PTO manager approval comments. Okay, when you get done with HR's yard work. Okay, enter some comments and then we'll complete the task. Okay, so now the calendar's been updated, that request has been approved. Of course, go back to Outlook. The employee gets an email back saying, your PTO request has been approved. The reason, and then here's all the comments from Human Resources as well as your supervisor. Okay. So what you didn't see here was a piece of paper floating around. What you didn't see here was a lack of communication between employee, Human Resources, and the supervisor. What you did see was an integration, a correlation, and a linking of business process, people, systems in place, doing everything electronically. And what's nice about that is you do have an audit trail for all of this, and everything is in place here. Okay, so that's what LINC is bringing, is combining all those things that we talked about at the beginning of the business process, the systems that you're using, Dynamics GP, and even in this case we're outside of Dynamics GP, but we're utilizing Dynamics GP data when we're doing this. It's also important to note that situations that involve customers and vendors, you can communicate externally as well. One of our workflows is a vendor tax ID request. In that situation, rather than asking for approval, when transactions get posted that exceed $600 year-to-date amount, and it's a 1099 vendor, and we don't have the tax ID number, the system automatically recognizes that. And instead of asking for any kind of approval internally, it's sending an email directly to the vendor to ask for their tax ID number. And using the remote approval capability, that vendor can reply with their tax ID number and have it come back and automatically update Dynamics GP. So there's a lot of great things that you can do with it, and a lot of the great things we've already done with it. I mentioned the 100 workflows that you can already download, in addition to some great things that our customers have done. One example is Blade Tech. They're a customer out near Seattle. They're one of our reference customers. What they do is they send notification to customers when their orders are shipping out of their manufacturing environment. So we all like to get emails from eBay and Amazon that our orders shipped. They're doing the exact same thing from Dynamics GP. So going back to that one slide where we're talking about some of the fun things you can do, there's all kinds of great things that you can do with this. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Well, so we've talked about, in this case, just 4 ways that, and again, that's only 4% of the workflows that are available today that you can utilize. how Joe's life might be different with ULINC. We showed some examples across the board, but think about payroll, financials, compliance, project, budgeting, receivables, accounts payable, security controls, and of course, whatever else you might need. So the benefits of ULINC: stronger compliance with your business process. That's one of the key things that we're after. Reducing the risk of erroneous transactions. We saw an example of transactions approval. We've done sales order approvals, sales batch approvals, AP transaction approvals, PO approvals, anything like that. It maximizes the value of your existing system. So you've already got Dynamics GP, you've already got SQL Server. I mentioned SharePoint, you've already got a license to SharePoint Foundation under Windows Server. A lot of customers are already using SharePoint Server or SharePoint Enterprise as well. Improving productivity. Obviously, with, I think a good example is the time off request. We saw how quickly that took place and how efficient it was and how clean it was with good communication. That's keeping everybody productive. Real-time insight, those real-time notifications that are coming through, gives real-time insight to the people that need it, what's going on within the organization. Low-cost implementation. I want to talk about this for a couple minutes. I was on a demonstration last week with a Dynamics GP customer. Actually, I believe they're based out in Ohio somewhere. And they were seeing some of the things. And at the end, they asked the question, well, all right, big question, how much is it? And they were scared about the price tag that was going to be on this. The reality is that the price of ULINC, and I am going to mention the price here in just a minute. The price of ULINC is based a lot because what we're doing is leveraging a lot of the things that you already have in place, maximizing value of your existing system. And really what we're doing is connecting those together using some of the great technology that already exists in your environment. A lot of times customers think, well, gee, this is going to be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. The reality is that in most cases you can implement a lot of what you saw today for less than $10,000. And I'm not going to give you the low price, 3 easy payments kind of thing. I'm just going to tell you what it is. The price of the application of ULINC itself, the license, is a flat license fee of $4,500 with 20% annual enhancement fee. There's no variable pricing for number of users, number of workflows, anything like that. It's just a flat license fee. That gives you access to the 100 workflows that you can download, gives you access to being able to build your own using those tools that I mentioned before, Dynamics GP, ULINC, now Dynamics GP, SQL Server, and SharePoint. SharePoint is a workflow engine. ULINC requires SharePoint Foundation. And that's one of the reasons that the price is so low. We looked at building just our own workflow platform, and it really just doesn't make sense because 99% of you already have a license for that workflow engine in SharePoint. And you might say, well, we're not using SharePoint today, or we don't have it set up. For many customers, we've set up just a SharePoint Foundation site just for ULINC, and that can be done in really a few hours. Okay, so $4,500 for the license, $900 for the annual enhancement plan, which gives you access to support and the workflows that exist and any new workflows we add and version upgrades and stuff like that. Implementation, standard implementation is usually 8 to 10 hours. That's installing ULINC, letting it configure for your environment around Dynamics GP, SharePoint, SQL Server, and so on, training you how to use it, downloading a couple of workflows, and getting those couple of workflows tested. Okay, so even at if the billing rate was $200 per hour, which is I'm not sure what your current billing rates are, that's $2,000. So we're at $5,500 and $2,000. That's $7,500. And then if you want to build any custom workflows or build your own or need us or the folks at Socius to help you do that, those can be built in typically a range of, a notification can be built in easily less than an hour. a complex workflow, maybe 4 to 6 hours, depending on the complexity. We've had some that have taken 8. But again, when you think about the benefits to your organization, the reduced cost, the reduced risk, the improved efficiency, because you're following that business process, even if you spent, 10 grand, then the value that you're getting to your organization is far exceeds that investment that you're making. A lot of customers have spent that just trying to get workflow working in Dynamics GP in a few of those situations that they could utilize that. My job is to give you the information. Your job is to evaluate your own situation, because I can't necessarily do that for you, but to look at those situations where you could utilize the notifications, the approval process, better follow the business process. Where are your risk areas? And then you can obviously do that business calculation of, say it's $7,500 or a little bit more than that versus the cost or risk of some of those situations that we described. That's up to you. I can't make that decision for you, but I want to give you this information, and hopefully this is helpful for you. Okay. Well, again, what we're trying to do is prevent you or anybody else in your organization as much as possible, reduce the risk of having this situation with poor old Joe here. And this is really the way that you should be sitting at your desk on most days. Now, even if everything in the system is going right, this isn't 24/7. I'm not trying to sell any kind of euphoria or anything that's not realistic. But again, we're trying to get control of those situations that we can get control over. And again, not just for you, but for others within your organization in different areas. So again, think about the information that you saw today. Think about those areas in your organization where those risks exist, or where those inefficiencies exist, or where those errors have happened, or those business processes haven't been followed. And then contact your Socius representative, or feel free to contact us here at Integrity Data. Plug LINC into your existing system easily and quickly. And I just told you how easily and quickly that is. So if, to me that's pretty efficient. If you think that's not efficient, then maybe that's not going to be a good fit. But start experiencing the benefits of LINC. And remember, I showed you 4 pretty powerful workflows, and again, that's only 4% of the workflows that are available for download. Okay, there's my contact information. The other thing that I want to do is I want to bring over onto the screen here our LINC website, just so you can see that real quick, because I do want to show you some of the features that are here. u-link.com. Here's the home page. Okay, you see some of the same graphics. If you go to the tour page, you'll see some videos of some of the workflows in different areas of the system. You'll see a couple that we covered today. There's even a couple in here if you're a Dynamics SL customer. There are some workflows there as well. Features, benefits, additional information. I think there's some references on here somewhere. Here's a list of all the available workflows, and I'm going to open this up for you right here on the site. And I'm going to scroll through it quickly. Here's everything associated with accounts payable. Trying to go down to the next page here. Okay, financials, compliance, some of the crossover. So you can see a pretty extensive list of workflows that here's payroll, HR, receivables that are available today, again, under that license price that I mentioned earlier. Just want to show you that information and let you see that. Okay. At this point, again, there's my contact information, integritydata.com, integrity-data.com, u-link.com. There's my email address. And, of course, feel free to contact me with any questions that you might have, or if you want to run any scenarios by me. We're always happy to help any way that we can. And so at this point, Nancy, do we have any questions on our question queue?
We do. Yes, there's one question Diana had is there an area where approvers can see all items they need to approve, or is it only accessed through individual emails? Then she also asked, is there a list of the 100 workflows to view, which you said are out on your website? I have a quick question on that list of 100 workflows. When you brought that up, I noticed that some of them said SL, so it's definitive as whether they're for GP or SL, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And there's only, I think we have somewhere around 110 total, and I think 10 of them are for SL.
Okay, great. Okay, so then her first question is on is there a repository, I guess, where an approver, let's say he only does it at the end of the day or at lunchtime or whenever he goes in, and it has a list of them rather than having, receiving different emails.
Yeah, and that's a good question. I want to show you an example of that. If I click over to the IT contact here, just because I know there's a link here to tasks. So here is an example of task lists, which would be workflows. So here's a list of all the workflows assigned to HR. So you can come in here and say all the workflows assigned to me. So these would be all of the things that I need to do and all the things that I need to approve.
Okay. And then just on that same level, you said that they could, those could be approved from your iPhone, smartphone. So, but there's no, you probably wouldn't have the drill back from a iPad or well, maybe an iPad, but a smartphone, would you?
That's correct. Yeah, if you're disconnected from your network, then you would not have that drill back capability.
But yeah, you could still approve it if you.
But you could
do
still approve and add comments. That's correct.
Okay, and then I've got a question.
Okay.
Because you said that developing some of these workflows were relatively easy. What kind of skills, developing skills, would an end user need? Do you think that where they could do develop their own work for this product?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's two skills that are needed to create your own workflow, and I'm going to throw in a little bit of a third one. The first one is understanding where the data lives if you're using Dynamics GP. So what we're doing is LINC is going to initiate off of a change to a table in the database. So if it's vendor related, it's going to be on the vendor master table. So just knowing where that data lives. To build your own and to say, well, I want to watch for a change to this information. That way, if somebody tries to go in and change it on a table, or if the data is imported from another system or anything like that, regardless of how that data changes, it's going to still initiate the process. So understand where the data is that you're looking for. So that's similar to setting up or building a smart list or an Excel report. The second skill that's needed is being able to maneuver through the building the workflow, which is done in SharePoint. We utilize SharePoint Designer for building the workflows. And typically the way that it happens is that the business process person will say, well, I need a workflow that's going to do this and this and this. And again, this is if it's something that's outside of the ones that are already there. And what you can do is you can actually design the workflow in Visio, and that's what I have on the screen here, saying, well, this is generally what we needed to do from a business perspective. And then this can be imported into SharePoint Designer. And then somebody that's familiar with the workflow tools in SharePoint Designer can then build out the rest of the workflow. It's not coding. It's just using that particular tool. It does require a little bit of maybe of a coding mindset, but it's not custom development or anything like that. It's just using that tool, again, that you more than likely already have a license to. The third component that I utilize sometimes, because I'm a little weak on the SharePoint side, is just the ability to plagiarize another workflow. And that's what I've done. I'll go download something that's close, and then I'll see how our people did it here, and then I'll finish creating the workflow like that. So that's another way to do it. Creating your own is a three-step process. It's identifying the data that you want to, essentially triggering off of, and what data you'll need in your workflow process. 2 is configuring the workflow in SharePoint Designer. 3 is setting up any controls for the ribbon in Dynamics GP, which is putting the ribbon on the window and then identifying how that window should behave when a workflow is in process. An example of that is the hold checkbox on the vendor maintenance window.
Okay, very cool. I don't see any other questions, and if anyone wants to raise their hand, I'll try to unmute them if they would like to, position their own question. something I might just add to, it's a little off the subject on LINC, but he was showing you the workflow for payroll and HR. As you all may or may not know, with GP 2013, Microsoft has included payroll and HR. And if you're not currently doing payroll in-house, some people are looking at doing so since the software is included with the new licensing. And Integrity Data does have some really great add-on features available for GP payroll and HR. They have a benefits solution. They have a splits and what is it? I'm sorry, Dan. There's several. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a comprehensive leave manager for managing accruing and managing leave time.
Yes.
Emailing earning statements to employees directly from Dynamics GP, direct deposit employees, negative payroll transactions, negative deductions.
Yeah, the negative, that's one, and again, I don't know if any of you all are using payroll, that historically when, in my 10 years of doing this job, the negative payroll is a big factor and has been very, very helpful. Anyway, if you're out at their website, you might just also look at any of those applications, as they are also good enhancements for GP payroll and HR. And if there are, oh, wait a minute, let's see if let's see if there's one more, Dan. It may not, it's maybe the same. Hang on just a second. Well, I can't seem to open that. Well, Diana, if there is another, and you have another question, I may have to pull it after the session ends. My apology. For some reason, I can't seem to open it. So I'm gonna go ahead and end our webinar today. And Dan, I really appreciate your time, as well as everybody that sat in on the demo. I hope you found it beneficial. I know that workflow is a constant need with clients. So if you have any questions, as Dan said, please reach out to either him or your account manager, and we'd love to work with you. And you guys have a great day, and you too, Dan.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.